Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
Hello, welcome to Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. We have a special episode for you today, which we are stealing from somebody else. Justin and I were guests of Skye Thorleifsen on his podcast, Adaptational. And one of the caveats of doing the podcast was that we would be given the unedited audio file for our long-suffering producer, Dan, to then re-edit for our own podcast. So they say that good artists borrow and great artists steal. So this is us doing just that. Do you have anything to add to that, Justin?
It was a great conversation at FanQuest, and I'd like to go back again sometime.
To the conversation or to FanQuest?
Yeah, I'd like to be guest again on Adaptational. It was a great
fun
conversation.
So as far as I understand it, Skye is new to the podcasting game, but he, I think, acquitted himself very well. He asked some pretty probing questions about some of our process, which I was keen to answer.
He really did his research, too. He knew all about us.
I know, yeah. As we were leading up to this podcast, dear listener, Skye started asking a whole bunch of questions that showed some deep understanding of things that we had done in our past, which we are not used to in interviews. Usually...
We certainly don't research our guests.
That is untrue. Sometimes. Without further ado, we are going to cut into this episode of Super Pulp Science, which is this episode of Adaptational.
Here with some very special guests. I am so excited to be talking with these gentlemen about one of their prominent collaborations, GMB Kamichuk and Justin Curry.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Skye.
Thank you so much for being a part of this. I am really excited to talk about this. Before we discuss the subject of the episode, Cassie and Tonk, I want to ask you just a couple of questions because you both host the Super Pulp Science podcast, as well as being writers and illustrators. Your podcast hosts. And
Some of us more willing than others.
That's right. Justin is the long-suffering co-host of Super Pulp Science.
Okay. Well, at the end, you focus a lot about the creation of genre on your show. But how often has the subject of adaptation come across your table?
Not very often. I think it's one of the reasons why we agreed to do this podcast, because it's a conversation we haven't really had as broadly as you cover here. I mean, we've talked about what would happen if this book got optioned or that book got optioned.
But we don't go down that rabbit hole
very often.
No.
Like,
jumping from media to media. We always talk about making graphic novels, but like, what if about a video game after that, or a TV show, or a movie? We don't talk about that too often, and it's really like, isn't that kind of the end goal of a lot of these projects? You hope that they're successful enough to like make the leap into a whole new medium?
Well, you want them to be right in their own way, but then also be able to, transfer to other mediums, I think, is important. Cassie and Tonk has, we're on the very tippity tip of actually adapting Cassie and Tonk into an animated project right now.
So we have gone, we're doing the process right now, so we know all about it.
Oh, wow. This is going to be so much fun. So let's talk. Actually, let's talk about Cassie and Tonk, the book, as a book to start off with. Why don't we just give a brief synopsis of the story to start off with for people who are unfamiliar with the story?
Okay, so Cassie and Tonk is the story of a girl and her robot at the end of the world. We all have someone that we love, and we all have someone that we'll lose, and it's a story about that relationship. It doesn't tell you how you're supposed to feel about it. It just sort of sets it up as a true part of life, that life is not forever.
That's a very powerful message in a way, and I think that it's very interesting to be talking about a children's book that explores that kind of theme. That is very very at times some people are very scared of telling children about that kind of story, I feel.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I have 2 children, and when I was working on Cassie and Tonk, we were reading, we would read all the time. We'd read every night, 3 or 4 books. And one of the things that struck me is you have this great moment to have real lasting conversations with the young people in your life based on the subjects that you're reading. And there are only so many books about sharing that I want to read about anymore, right? You're like, it's good. It's important to share. All the books but that's covered. We got that covered. And I just felt like there were some deeper questions that could be asked by young people. And so this book kind of fulfills that place. And it was actually very big-hearted of Justin to allow us to go in that direction, because he had made all these sort of great toys to play with in this very brightly colored, wonderful adventure world. And I was like, oh, let's make it super sad.
Which we didn't really plan off the get-go. The story really evolved once it was... we had a lot of the building blocks in place. It was starting to take shape, and I started finishing pages, and Greg started writing, and we were bouncing ideas back and forth. We really didn't know how the story was going to end or what the story was until nearly the finish line. It all kind of came together very organically and evolved kind of naturally. So it was not a planned thing. It just kind of is a result of our collaboration.
I can remember the moment we were sitting at the Cornerstone restaurant.
The double page spread.
Yeah, where we figured out that, a young person sitting on the floor with the format. Justin had decided on the format of the book. He wanted it to be this big widescreen sort of thing. And I said, well, when a kid reads these kinds of books, and I was just talking about my own experience as a dad watching this happen. They often sit on the floor on their stomachs and they're flipping the pages. And so they're right there in the whole world. Yeah. And maybe, Justin was like, oh, well, we could do it a quarter of a page of this blackness. Oh, maybe a whole page of this blackness. And then we both looked at each other and was like, can we afford the double page spread to just be all this emptiness, all this empty black? And we both, I think, got a chill and just said, yeah, we have to do it. And then I think a lot of the story got adjusted to build up to that moment, that 2-page reveal.
Once we figured out that moment, it was kind of a linchpin in the ending, and everything else kind of fell into place around it. And this was like, what? Let's say 4 weeks from print deadline. It was close to the end. So
good. Adaptation, improvisation, but your weakness is not your technique.
I understand, the credits of the book, as I mentioned, say created by Justin Curry and written by Gregory Kamichek. Apologies. What was the process of what? First of all, Justin, why did you open yourself up to the possibility of collaborating?
Why would you put yourself through that, Justin?
I asked myself that over and over. As Greg often puts it, he got to... I had built a bunch of toys, and then he got to play with them. Cassie and Tonk was a story that I'd been working on my own for... on and off for a couple of years. I'd never made a book before, and I knew I had a lot of elements that were they had rough edges, and I think they needed help to be kind of honed down and forged into a proper book. And I was familiar with Greg's work, and I was familiar with him from Comic-Cons and stuff like that, and he just seemed like a really good person to help bounce ideas off of, for one, because I'd been thinking about this for so long without anybody to really test the ideas out on, and somebody who could help kind of with the direction of all the pieces that I had. So the first couple meetings we had were just over coffee, just kind of talking about the story beats. I had a lot of scenes that I wanted to see in the book, but I had no idea how it was all going to get connected, and that's what he kind of came in and did. He took all those puzzle pieces and found the pieces that went in between them.
And we figured out in those conversations that we had a similar process for making graphic novels, is that we when we come up with a setting, we have sort of scenes that we imagine happening, but we don't know where they fit in. And so he said, you know, I have this scene on the ocean floor with a bunch of giant crabs. I have, I have a scene like this. I have a scene like that. And different stuff found its way into different books. So, some stuff is in Rust and Water now, and some stuff is that came up in those conversations were things we stitched together into Cassie and Tonk. This version, stuff from that conversation is furthering its way into the sequels. Like there is...
we did a lot of world building.
Yeah.
We only showed a small part of it, but we're going to be showing more in the years to come. Yeah, we're not done with the world and the characters. So.
It can take a little bit of practice to build a whole world and then realize that it all can't be in the story.
Yeah.
So I think that's some of what I brought to the table was looking at all these great scenes and elements and saying, okay, if it is a story, what's the thread we can pull through this? And when we pull it tight, it all comes together. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. So this confirms one of my questions, which I was going to ask, which was Rust and Water. Now, I will admit, I've fallen behind on reading these books, but they are part of the same universe, basically, to some extent. So
correct.
And you're writing more of them, more of this type of story.
Yeah, it's after Rust and Water, it kind of cemented in my mind a couple-year plan. I have we both have a couple books planned out with kind of similar themes. There's always a robot and a smaller human counterpart, and often the robot doesn't say much, or if he does, he can't be understood. So coined the series The Silent Guardians, and it's going to be 5 to 7 books coming out in the next couple of years, and hopefully eventually my plan is I want to do a 30-pound huge omnibus at the end of all this that's way too big for any shelf. But, yeah.
One of the reasons I think Justin gets things done is he imagines holding the finished product first and then reverse engineers the process that will allow him to hold the book he wants. And I think that, there can be a lot to be said for the right kind of visualization when you're working on things.
Eye on the prize.
That's right.
Gregory, I'm familiar with your other works as well, Infinitum and the Imagination Manifesto. And when I say that they're totally distinct from Cassie and Tonk,
yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
I mean, they're very, very distinct. They're more brutal sometimes. They're more bizarre at times. What was the feeling that you had going into making something that was different from that kind of field that you were familiar with?
Well, I think people are more than just one thing, first of all. We like to read lots of different things.
True.
And I think it's a mistake in the world of publishing to pigeonhole authors into one type of, oh, you're a horror writer, that's all you can do. Oh, you do science fiction, that's all you can do. And because these were projects that we were going to be at the helm of, there was no need to be under those constraints. But also, the tones... If you track my work, you can actually see the moment, I think, pretty clearly where, hey, I'm going to be a dad. Those themes show up in the work. And then, hey, I am a father. Those themes show up in the body of work, not specifically in the works themselves, but in my body of work. You can see the moment where I'm doing stuff specifically for adults or teen audiences, and then it suddenly diverges into, oh, here's some other voices that I can share with younger people, because I had this built-in audience at home that was fun to tell stories to.
Do you often write with your children in mind then?
Well, we have, for a number of years, we've had a habit at bedtime of I will lie down with them in their room, and they'll tell me 3 random elements, and then I verbally just doing a little oral storytelling and tell them a story that weaves its way through those 3 things. And as a result, we have told a lot of stories in a lot of different places. There's been a few versions of Cassie and Tonk over the years in that way. But yeah, I love telling stories to my kids and with my kids, for sure.
God, that takes me back to when I was a kid suddenly. All of these references.
Right, it's just fun. And you're making it up. Kids don't have any understanding of what's at stake when they're that age. They just want a story. And if a story had a giant frog in it and a wizard and a pickup truck, right? do that, Dad. A pickup truck and a wizard and a giant frog, and you just do your best.
Now this is the first ever children's book I've actually covered on this show. I'll be perfectly honest, and it's such a relief to do something that has universal appeal to it to a great extent. It's a simple story with two characters that you spend a lot of time with, and you connect very strongly to. And I was not prepared for the ending, to be perfectly honest, like the last revelation. But it took me back to like memories of my grandparents. They both passed away in the last decade or so. But the fact that to some extent, the story is even about memory to some extent.
Absolutely is, yeah.
Remembering all of the things that mattered. You didn't think that they mattered before, but when you look back on those moments, you think, this meant something. This meant something to me personally, and you might not even be aware of that. Oh boy. Do you have any kind of sense of when you're creating a story that focuses on those kinds of memories? Do they ever feel too personal to you or anything like that, or is it just something that comes to you naturally? Like, I want to show this image. I want to show this image.
Well, I think it's both of those things, right? We knew from a fantasy adventure standpoint what would be fun imagery to show, I think. I'm not mischaracterizing you, Justin, there, I don't think. Right? We just said, oh, that would be cool. That would be a neat scene. That would be fun to show. And this book is different in that the words are retrospective. It's an older character looking back on the events of their life. And so we're seeing all of these sort of fun adventure elements with a tone of wisdom rather than a tone of, without a childlike voice. And so it gives it that weight. But to answer your question specifically, I think good writing, really good writing, should be uncomfortable for the person writing it. It should be hard to do because it's honest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We also, kind of the mission statement behind this book, I'm not exactly sure when this became a mission statement, but eventually at some point we just started saying, we're going to make people cry. Let's make people cry.
We were being kind of tongue-in-cheek about it, but we said, what are those elements? Like, where does sadness find its root? And what can we do to dig as deep into that as we can? And it just came down to stories we all had.
You sound like you're looking forward to it.
I'm adaptable.
Let's talk about this film adaptation.
Bum, bum, bum.
I was, now to start off with, I'm actually going to bring up one parallel that I noticed between this story and another story that I am familiar with.
All right.
Now, there are certain story types that I am fairly familiar with, and even at this con, I'm kind of doing a thematic thing for each day. And since I did my last episode, which I recorded here, was on BioShock, which is a different interpretation of the young girl and the giant robot.
Yeah, that's true.
Scenario.
Yeah.
But one thing that couldn't escape my head, and I mean this in a very positive way, as a child of the 90s, I couldn't help but think of the Iron Giant to some extent while I was reading that.
We're nodding our heads in great affirmation to your statement.
Okay, good. Was there any point during the writing process where you're thinking, okay, how do we separate this from this? How do we make this story distinct from the Iron Giant?
Well, it's the singer, not the song, I think.
Fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we were ever too worried. There was a couple things in like the influence bank that were prominent during the making of this book, and the Iron Giant was one. Dragonheart was another movie from my childhood that I really loved and has kind of got similar.
Movie too. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Similar themes, and then
Excellent movie.
the storytelling kind of style and length of Pixar shorts. How they're short, concise, tight stories that happen with a couple of characters in a brief amount of time, and they all a lot of them hit you really, really hard. And since this was kind of my first foray into sequential artwork and storytelling, I didn't want to do a 250-page graphic novel with 8 characters and a big epic. I kind of wanted to keep it to something like almost like the beginning of Up. 2 characters, you immediately fall in love with them, and then there's a kind of get punched in the face later on. All within 5 minutes, right? This is before the movie's even started.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Iron Giant was definitely an influence, but it was kind of mixed in with a whole bunch of other things along those lines. And I think if anything, we'd invite comparison, or
Yeah, I would invite comparison. The
there
other
needs to be more things like the Iron Giant.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree.
There's not enough. Yeah.
And here's the thing: if there's creators listening, to be influenced by something is good. It's fine, but what you want to avoid is returning to that influence when it's time to make an editorial choice in your story. So once we both love the Iron Giant, but once we started working on this, we didn't refer to it. Right? We used it as a reason to begin, but not as a choice to be made as to what to change in the story. So you want to use your influences more like, like a star to travel towards rather than a light to see by, right?
Good one.
Very good. But since we're on the subject of short films, this is a very short book in terms of the events. There's no actual distinction as to the amount of time that passes between the start of the book and the end of the book. There's some reference to...
Yeah, you did that great montage of
I like
fun
montages.
things happening.
And if you pay attention to Tonk's design, part of a thing about the robots in this world is they're constantly changing and evolving to some degree. They grow like people grow. So Tonk's design actually changes in a lot of subtle ways and some not so subtle ways. By the end of the book, he's got a lot more accessories and scratches and stuff going on. But yeah, we never really discussed.
We never talked about
how
time.
long
No.
they hung out, and I think that in part was because we knew we might want to come back to this someday, and it turns out we are going to come back. And we might want to be showing some other things that happened with these 2 characters that we didn't show in the first book, but we'll show in the next book.
And there's also, when you're trying to tell a concise story, thematically, it also connected to the notion of, how long does it take for a young person to become really good friends with somebody? Sometimes 3 breaths and they're best friends forever, we wanted that idea that this friendship happens almost instantly, and then that bond, stayed with them.
Absolutely.
Until the end.
Until the end.
So, since you brought up that you finished, would you say it's a first draft or a second draft, or where are you at in the process of writing this script?
In the adaptation? So in the adaptation, we are, there's a number of different things going on. We're working towards a 3-minute proof of concept.
Okay.
Right? So we have written a universe Bible. Justin's put together sort of all the elements that go into the world of Cassie and Tonk. We have... I'm not sure how much of it we're allowed to talk about.
Yeah, we'll probably have to skirt around specifics. But yeah, what we've done is we put together a Bible. So if anybody were to come on and write a story in our world, they would know kind of the rules of the world and how everything works and how the robots interact with each other, and they could tell their own story in that world, and it would go together. It would be canon kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we put one of those together, which is important.
Well, one of the reticence to sort of tell the whole story is, I think, because we'd have to explain. You need context. So when someone is typically putting together an animated project, they've been sought out by a studio. The studio pays them the option, and then the studio, now that they've paid for that option, has all the control of that property. We did Cassie and Tonk as kind of an independent success story, and we wanted to do the animation the same way. So we found an animation studio. We are doing the bulk of the design and editorial content ourselves, and then the studio is providing us with a proof of concept that then we have as a capacity to take to a larger broadcaster and say, maybe you like this, but it's ours, not somebody else's. And that is putting us in an interesting position because there is a number of producers that are quite interested in the project. They're not used to people coming with stuff so far along in the pipeline. So we kind of have had the accidental success of, just because we wanted to be megalomaniacs about it and have more control, taking it to a level of professionalism by finding the right partners.
It does kind of give you an advantage where they see that you've done this much work and they're like, okay, just leave these guys alone. We can let them do their thing. They clearly know what they're doing.
So a lot of people sort of imagine adaptation as this light that comes shining down from on high and it's just going to solve all their problems and they're going to be given like a bunch of money is just going to float down in a pile. Typically that's not how adaptations work.
No.
They're very cheaply bought development deals that leave the creative force out of it. The artist would almost never get a say at that point. So we're in a great position where, because Justin has built the world, he has veto on everything, which is kind of a wonderful place. People look to me as the writer, and I get to point to him and say, no, it's his fault if you don't like it, or he's the one that has to answer that question, which keeps that collaborative wheel turning nicely for us both, I think.
Yeah.
Right? You get to be the bad guy sometimes and just say no in the meetings.
So tell me about your mutation.
Well, I adapt to survive.
Adapt to this.
Since it's being animated, I do have to ask, in terms of an art design for the world, the book has a very distinct art style to it. You have a very distinct art style. I follow you on Instagram, so I'm always fascinated by what you have to interpret, like everything from Shadow of the Colossus and different original works that you've worked on and so forth. Do you want to keep that art style as much as possible in the animation?
That was, I think priority number one when this whole snowball started rolling was kind of a large amount of appeal to my work is the style before you get to the content almost. It's the look of it really has a lot of pull, so we didn't want to lose that with the animation, and we're really lucky living in Winnipeg. We are surrounded by really talented 3D artists and animators and riggers that we can afford a lot more easily than if we were almost anywhere else. Like Vancouver, Toronto has bigger cities have big talent pools as well, but Winnipeg is kind of like an untapped well of talent. So we were working with some really great people who have done a great job of translating the 2D style into 3D models and rigs and stuff. So I think the style is definitely going to show through. Yeah,
it was cool to meet people on the team who were familiar with the book and really interested in making it look that way.
That was their priority too. We want to animate this and we want to make sure it looks like the book. Mm-hmm.
But nothing 2D can be 3D in the same way. It's just there is some translation, and so we're just making choices based on what is possible and what is what our wishes and reality. There's a little Venn diagram where there's a sliver where they all line up, and whenever they can, we push for that. But sometimes, you got to let some things go. That's what adaptation is about, right? You're changing it to fit a new medium.
Absolutely. Very few people I talk to realize that sometimes, honestly. Now, I know that you don't want to give too much away about the actual content of the adaptation, and I will leave that. I will leave. If you don't want to give too much detail about these little questions that I have about it, then you don't need to say very much. But I do have a couple of curious questions to ask about.
Sure, fire away.
The expansion of the world, possibly. Yeah. Are there going to be more robot designs?
Yes, sort of.
Well, so what we're building right now is kind of a proof of concept, like a test. Mm-hmm. So we're not building too many new things yet. We're taking a small portion of the world and showing it in an animated space with the purpose of later down the road expanding things. So we're still kind of at the we're just building blocks right now for things that could be a lot bigger and broader. But yeah, those we won't really know exactly where things are going for a while yet. We're still just getting everything ready to roll.
And there's a neat. So I say like why I made that long drawn out maybe is that when you rig something for animation, because we're doing 3D animation, the body language of the creature can change entirely how people see it and feel with it. So to me, it's almost like there's a redesign of existing elements because you're seeing them move for the first time.
And then sound design.
The sound design has been so fun.
Who's like doing, what the bad robots sound like and what Tonk sounds like, when he's just idle and when he starts to move, and like that's a whole thing that I never really even thought about until suddenly it was there, and that was a whole new layer of character.
Like what does Tonk sound like when he's standing still?
Remember,
is a strange concept.
Yeah.
Right?
We were asked that question. We just kind of stared blankly for like a minute. I don't know. I guess we should think about that.
Yeah, you has to make a noise. What kind of noise you make? And then I start rumbling and making all these weird robot noises in my throat. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Right? So, yeah. Adaptation is interesting because it opens up the entire conversation again to why you made certain choices.
Oh, yeah.
You have to analyze a lot of what you've done.
There's limitations to some extent to what you can do in just one panel of a comic book or something like that. But there's also infinite possibilities of what that one thing could be in that panel. But also, and in a movie, you can go even bigger sometimes. And I'm just wondering about all of the different elements of the world that could be expanded in this adaptation. Basically.
Well, we could probably mention an expansion that's occurring. I'll let that be Justin's news, though.
Are we? Yeah.
I don't know. Are we allowed? We could hint at it. Hint vaguely at an expansion.
Along with making.
Because we signed a contract with her, so we can.
Did.
Yeah.
Everything's greenlit.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You heard it here first, people.
So, since we put together this Bible and we started working with an animation team, we started thinking about what other mediums we could expand the universe with. So that kind of led us to reaching out to a writer friend of ours to write a short young adult novel set in the Cassie and Tonk world.
Okay.
So this story is in very early stages, not necessarily going to have Cassie and or Tonk in it, but it will have blue robots and the wrens and kind of be set in the world, and we might skirt around the main story.
One of the most exciting parts is that when you bring an author on, you have to leave them room to do what they do, right? So rather than say, here's a whole bunch of things that you must do, we just gave a very short list of things you couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so when the first draft comes in, we'll be as surprised as you are to know what happens in the story. Based on her other work, we knew that she was more than capable of doing what it is we need. And so, that part is exciting. That's an adaptation where we get to sit back and read through it and say, oh, this is how someone else interprets the world.
Are you going to be more critical of her as a result, or is it just something that you want to let free to some extent?
I don't know. I imagine us as being freewheeling, but maybe we'll be different when we see that first draft.
Yeah, I have no idea how I'm going to react, right?
Tune in next podcast.
I know the best projects, the way to get the best work out of me is to give me a list of guidelines and then just tell me to go to town. Like, I'm going to give you some suggestions and then the rest I'm leaving up to you. And that's always how the best projects happen. When you try to box somebody in too much, I don't think they can really do their best work.
No, so we've tried to adhere to that in setting up a system for this other author to work on, and we're very confident that she's going to knock it out of the park.
And tentative deadline on that?
It's Calgary Comic-Con.
So April next year, we hope to have this book. Yeah.
In your hands.
In your hands.
You heard it here first. There's two more things that I actually like to explore, just about the first of all, about the world of the book. One thing that I remember hearing on your podcast while you were creating the story, initially, one of the things that I was fascinated by, and I love hearing this oftentimes, is that you were at one time considering just making it completely dialogue-free, completely silent.
Silent story. What do you even need a writer for, your girlfriend said, if it's going to be silent? Ouch. It hurts so much.
Well, the way we told the story initially was with thumbnails and roughs. We did it completely visually first, and like Greg and I both did quite a few thumbnails and roughs of the pages. And then when I started putting pages together, it was just the visuals first. And I think somewhere along the line, we both agreed we need to make sure this works as a silent story, and then the words are going to come last. Like, I think Greg did a rough draft. I started working on the book, and it wasn't until it was almost fully drawn that he came and did his revised draft to kind of put the words over top. But since we've been working together on other books as well, that's usually how we tell the story, in visual beats, because we're both visual artists, and the words come in when we need them. But it doesn't make them any less important. They're very important.
No, and you get that juxtaposition between the word and the image if you use it at the right time, you know?
Absolutely. I love hearing that. As a film nerd, I am absolutely enamored with films and stories that are able to tell things without dialogue. And there's that rule: a movie should be able to tell you its story with basically with everything mute, basically. Yeah. And how much of that do you think could potentially translate into this kind of story? Because one thing that I'm really annoyed with in a lot of children's movies, especially, is that they never shut up.
Yeah, I also agree with you. Is that there's a lot of incessant babbling that occurs in a lot of kids programming. I think that's just a wrong-headed approach to what they think like OCD generation requires.
I think that's why I loved WALL-E so much. The first 40 minutes of WALL-E, there's no dialogue or something like that. And I absolutely love that. And I know people who hated it. Like, there's no talking in this.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing.
That's the greatest thing.
So we're hoping to strike a middle ground, you know, in the adaptation for enough quiet moments. You know, if I were to get my druthers, we'd see as much storytelling in the body language of the characters as we would in the voiceover.
Adapt or die.
We talk a lot about your process of adapting your own work and how much it changes from media A to media B and so forth. But you're also both working to some extent with other people's material.
Occasionally, yeah.
On occasion.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of work based on other people's licenses, video games and movies and books and so forth. And you are working on the graphic novel adaptation of Baby Metal.
That is true. Yes, I am. Yeah.
I have never heard of a adaptation of a band before, but
I feel like you're gonna hear a lot more of it. Like, it's such a great idea. I can't believe more haven't done it.
Well, you know, it's interesting because in the 90s, Kiss got really into adapting their sort of cosmology into comics.
I think I remember that.
Right.
I remember like issues of it or something.
Yeah, right. And so, but the Baby Metal graphic novel Apocrypha, The Legend of Baby Metal, is exactly that. It's a story of a legend. And as a, you know, I'm a little bit slavish to my study of mythology, so I feel like quite in a good position to be working on that project. And also, it's an adaptation that is not okay, how do I say, there's a limit to what I'm allowed to say about the book before it comes out, but what I'll say is this. Because Justin was in the same position recently working for Marvel, things he wasn't allowed to talk about, still not allowed to talk about,
Soon,
right? For Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you're presented with a concept and then asked to do your take on it,
which
right?
is lovely, not being put in that box that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And trust they saw Greg's work, they were familiar with Greg's work, and they approached him to work on this because they knew what he could do and they trusted him to do it well.
To do it my way. And the same with Justin is that, Marvel Studios got in touch and said, we want you to do some work for us. Here's a whole bunch of references to work you've done in your style. Not a bunch of references to other people's work. Please do this. But hey, the stuff that you do, we like. Do it for us.
Nice.
So that's, if we just allow ego to run rampant for a second, it's like the greatest part of being an artist is to be recognized for your style and to be asked to do that. If you put your ego back in a box, it's also to remember that style and substance must be in equal measure, right? And so the script for the Baby Metal graphic novel is awesome. So when I read through the treatment and read through how they were going to do it and realized that it wasn't, some corporate pamphlet for why people should buy X music.
Did it feel like it was written for you?
It kind of did, yeah. It felt a little bit like, wow.
It wasn't. It was just you're such a good fit for the project.
That's how it felt. So I'm really proud of it. I hope I do it justice. I'm a little nervous that the fans, who are wondering why this Western guy is the guy doing it. I just hope that they like it.
Absolutely massive fan base. I'm excited for the amount of people that are going to be seeing this.
So there's been a lot of trust placed on me, and I'm just trying to hit the mark as best I can.
How do you know that you've met that mark, however? Like, how do you know you've reached the middle ground where you're surviving? Never.
You never know.
That's what keeps you up at night.
Yeah, it's true. I turn in pages.
You can't please anyone these days.
Yeah. I turn in pages to the people in charge, and they have very few notes lately. And, again, there's a difference between a style note when you're working on a book and a content note. Mm-hmm. And so a style note would be like, I just don't like how you drew this person, right? So you could draw him a bunch of times and still never get it right. Uh-huh. A content note is this hair, this style, this thing, I want to look more like this other thing or less like this other reference. I'm being purposely vague because I'm not until October, I can't give those specifics. But content suggestions are the best kind of feedback you can get as an artist working on a project. Style suggestions are the worst kind because you can't change your style. You got hired for your style.
You worked years getting that style. You don't want to.
You don't want to change it. So it has been almost no style changes and all content changes that have been required. And, those are 100% on me. When I miss the mark on something and they say, oh, hey, do you remember this? Remember we talked about this? Oh, yeah, clearly I forgot. So we just do our best.
Very cool, very cool. So just to wrap things up a little bit, first of all, when do you expect the Cassie and Tonk movie to be moving forward?
Well,
when can we talk about
Yeah. So the interest of full disclosure, what we're developing is the capacity to turn Cassie and Tonk into either a full-length animated feature or a animated series.
Okay.
So we're building the assets and the capacity in place, and it may yet be none of those things. They call it development hell for a reason. But we are learning a lot in the process, and we know much better now how to bring our next things to the adaptation stage.
Also important, it's an exciting project moving in an exciting direction, but it's one of many irons we have in the fire. And maybe Cassie and Tonk doesn't end up being like a full-length animated movie, but we have half a dozen others that might be.
Yeah.
And that now that we've done it once, or we're potentially doing it once, the next time is going to be easier, and the time after that is going to be even easier. And we've got a lot of plans.
Pretty soon we'll have the Silent Guardian cinematic universe.
I love it.
Oh my God.
But you don't eliminate, you transmute. So whatever we can't get done with the Cassie and Tonk animation in this form, we make a lot of notes and make a lot of decisions about what we're going to do on the next thing differently. And part of what's good for both of our hearts, I think, is that we have so much stuff going on that we don't have to put all of our hopes and dreams on this one thing, that it allows us to be a little bit more forgiving when it doesn't hit the mark.
For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live, inside. where no one can see it or hear it.
Thank you again.
Thanks for having us, Skye.
Yeah, thanks.
This concludes the episode of Adaptational on Cassie and Tonk. Before you go, where can people find you on social media? And do you have anything that you'd like to pitch or to name drop at the moment?
Everything I do online is under the brand Chasing Artwork, so whatever social media or wherever you like to hang out online, I have an account under Chasing Artwork. And then I've got my new art book coming out this August, so that's everything from the last couple years, as well as my process tutorials, step-by-steps, and previews of upcoming projects. That'll be available in August on all my sites and at every convention I'm at, which is very, very many.
And I am the only GMB Kamichuk online, but I am also the hardest to spell of everybody. So that's GMB CHOMICHUK on all social media. Our next project together is a book called Dragon Nanny.
Prince in November.
Prince in November.
I am immediately curious.
Yeah.
I love dragons.
Yeah.
So
So look for us. Thanks.